The scent of stale sweat, cheap disinfectant, and unfulfilled dreams hung heavy in the air of the Northwood High School gymnasium. It was a smell Big Jim Harrison had grown accustomed to over his 20 years as the school's night janitor. Every evening, after the last student had bolted and the last teacher had locked their classroom, Jim would begin his silent, meticulous work, erasing the day's grime, preparing the stage for another round of youthful ambition. Jim was a man of quiet dignity, his movements slow but deliberate, his face a roadmap of weathered lines that spoke of a life lived, not just endured. He was tall with broad shoulders that still carried a hint of past strength, and his hands, though calloused from years of scrubbing and mopping, were surprisingly gentle when he handled a broken piece of equipment or carefully stacked stray textbooks. To most, he was invisible, a fixture, a shadow, the man who cleaned up after them. To Coach Miller, however, Jim was a convenient target. Coach Rex Miller was a man built like a brick wall, with a booming voice and an ego to match. He lived and breathed Northwood basketball, convinced that his team, the Northwood Hawks, was destined for greatness, provided he could instill enough discipline and toughness. His methods often veered into bullying, and his favorite recipient of his bluster was often the unassuming janitor. "Hey, Jim, you gonna get this floor buffed tonight, or are we playing on a slip and slide tomorrow?" Miller would bellow, striding into the gym, usually long after the players had left, just as Jim was getting started. "My boys got practice at 6 a.m. Can't have them breaking their necks on your mess." Jim would simply nod, a quiet "yes, coach," and continue pushing his industrial buffer, the low hum of the machine a counterpoint to Miller's bluster. He never argued, never retaliated, never even met Miller's gaze for too long. He just did his job. This perceived meekness only fueled Miller's condescension. He saw Jim as weak, a man stuck in a dead-end job, someone he could easily dominate. He'd leave equipment scattered, knowing Jim would meticulously put it away. He'd track mud across the freshly mopped floor, offering a sarcastic, "Oops, my bad, Jimbo." One evening, a week before the regional championships, Miller was particularly agitated. His star player, a talented but undisciplined forward named Jamal, had been struggling. Miller had kept Jamal late, yelling at him, pushing him through extra drills, until the boy was on the verge of tears. Jim, who had been quietly cleaning the locker rooms, heard it all. He heard Jamal's frustrated grunts, Miller's relentless shouts, the thud of the ball against the backboard. When Jamal finally stumbled out, red-faced and defeated, Jim offered him a small, sympathetic nod. Jamal, usually too proud to acknowledge the janitor, returned it with a weary sigh. Miller, seeing Jim emerge, puffed out his chest. "What are you looking at, Jim?" Never seen a real coach push his players to be great. Jim paused. His eyes, usually downcast, met Miller's for a fleeting moment. There was something in them, a deep sadness, a flicker of something unreadable, that made Miller pause. But then Miller dismissed it. "Just get back to your mops, Jim. Some of us are trying to build champions here." Jim said nothing, just turned and resumed his duties. The next day, during practice, Jamal's performance was worse. He missed easy shots, fumbled passes, and his usual explosive energy was gone. Miller was livid. "What is wrong with you, Jamal? You playing like a scrub. You want to win a championship, or you want to mop floors for a living like old Jim?" Miller yelled, pointing a finger towards the empty bleachers where Jim would usually be seen later. Jamal flinched, his shoulders slumping. The other players exchanged uncomfortable glances. Later that evening, as Jim was polishing the gym floor, he saw Jamal sitting alone in the bleachers, his head in his hands. Jim hesitated, then slowly walked over, his buffer humming softly behind him. "Rough day, huh, son?" Jim's voice was a low rumble, surprisingly gentle. Jamal looked up, startled. "Yeah, Jim, coach is on my case. I can't get it right. My shot's off. My head's not in the game." Jim nodded, his gaze fixed on the gleaming floor. Basketball's a funny thing. Lotta pressure. Lotta noise. Hard to hear your own rhythm sometimes. Jamal scoffed. "Rhythm? What do you know about rhythm, Jim? You just clean up after us." Jim chuckled softly, a dry, raspy sound. "Been around a few basketballs in my time, son. Seen a few shots go in, seen a few miss." He paused, then looked at Jamal, his eyes surprisingly keen. "You're thinking too much, Jamal. Trying too hard to be what coach wants you to be. You gotta remember who you are." Jamal looked intrigued despite himself. "What do you mean?" "Your shot," Jim continued, gesturing vaguely. "It's got a hitch. You're pushing it, not letting it flow. And your footwork, you're off balance when you release. It's all in the foundation, son. The feet, the core, the follow-through." Jamal stared. Jim was talking about basketball with an unexpected precision. How? How do you know that?" Jim just shrugged, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Just an old man who's seen a lot of games. Tell you what, tomorrow after practice, if you want, I can show you a little something." "No, coach. Just you and me. See if we can find that rhythm again." Jamal was skeptical but desperate. "Okay, Jim?" "Yeah." The next evening, after Miller had dismissed practice with another frustrated tirade, Jamal stayed behind. He found Jim, as promised, waiting by the side entrance, a worn leather duffel bag at his feet. "Ready, son?" Jim asked. They walked onto the court. Jim didn't say much at first. He just watched Jamal shoot, his eyes tracking every movement, every subtle shift in weight, every angle of release. "All right," Jim finally said. "First, lose the shoes." Jamal blinked. "What?" "But trust me," Jim said, his voice firm. "Feel the court. Feel the ground beneath you. Basketball ain't just about the hoop, son. It's about the earth, the connection." Reluctantly, Jamal took off his expensive sneakers. He felt awkward, exposed. "Now, dribbled," Jim instructed. "Slow. Feel the ball. Don't just bounce it. Listen to it. It's got a heartbeat." For the next hour, Jim put Jamal through a series of drills. Unlike anything Miller had ever taught him, they weren't about speed or power, but about balance, fluidity, and connection. Jim had Jamal dribble with his eyes closed, shoot from strange angles, even practice his footwork in slow motion, emphasizing the subtle shifts of weight, the pivot, the lift. Jim demonstrated a few moves himself, surprisingly nimble for a man his age. His movements were economical, almost graceful. He didn't jump high, but his shots were pure arcing perfectly through the net with a soft swish. Jamal watched, mesmerized. There was an elegance, acquire power in Jim's movements that he'd never seen before. "Remember, son," Jim said, picking up a stray ball, "the game's in here." He tapped his chest, and here he tapped his head, "before it's ever in your hands." Over the next few days, Jamal secretly met Jim after every practice. Jim taught him about angles, about reading the defense, about the subtle art of the pump fake and the no-look pass. He taught him how to quiet the noise in his head, how to trust his instincts, how to find his own rhythm. Jamal's confidence slowly returned, his shot finding its sweet spot, his movements becoming more fluid, more natural. Miller, oblivious to these clandestine sessions, noticed the change in Jamal. "What's gotten into you, Jamal? You finally listening to me," he grumbled, secretly pleased. Jamal just smiled. "Something like that, coach." The regional championship game arrived, a packed house, the air electric with anticipation. The Hawks were facing their arch rivals, the formidable West Side Wolves, a team known for their aggressive defense and relentless offense. The game was a brutal. Northwood struggled against West Side's suffocating defense. Jamal, despite his newfound confidence, was getting rattled. He missed a crucial free throw, and the Wolves capitalized, taking a 5-point lead with 2 minutes left on the clock. Miller was red-faced, screaming from the sidelines, "Jamal, what are you doing? Get your head in the game." Jamal looked defeated. He saw Jim sitting quietly in his usual spot in the top row of the bleachers, watching. Jim caught his eye and gave a subtle, almost imperceptible nod. A gentle reminder. Rhythm, connection. Jamal took a deep breath. He closed his eyes for a split second, remembering Jim's words. The feeling of the court beneath his bare feet. He opened them, and a calm settled over him. He took the ball, dribbled slowly, deliberately, feeling the heartbeat of the leather against his palm. He drove to the basket, a blur of motion. Then, instead of a power shot, he executed a perfect no-look pass to an open teammate who scored an easy layup. The crowd roared. On the next possession, Jamal stole the ball, raced down the court, and with a fluid, almost effortless movement, pulled up from beyond the arc. The shot was pure, arcing gracefully through the air, swishing through the net. 3 points. The crowd erupted. The game came down to the wire. With 10 seconds left, Northwood was down by 1. Jamal had the ball. Westside's best defender was draped all over him. The clock ticked down. Miller was screaming, "Shoot! Shoot! Jamal!" But Jamal didn't shoot. He remembered Jim's lesson, read the defense. He saw a tiny opening, a split second of hesitation from his defender. He drove hard, then, with a lightning-fast crossover, spun past his man. He was under the basket, but 2 more defenders converged. He didn't panic. He saw it. A sliver of space. A teammate cutting to the baseline. With a flick of his wrist, he lobbed a perfect pass, a soft, arcing dish that landed perfectly in his teammate's hands. The teammate laid it in as the buzzer sounded. Northwood won. The gym exploded. Players piled onto each other. The crowd roared. Miller jumped up and down, pumping his fists. Jamal was mobbed by his teammates, hoisted onto their shoulders, a hero. Amidst the celebration, Jamal's eyes scanned the bleachers. Jim was gone. He had slipped away, as always, a quiet shadow. The next day, the school was buzzing. The Hawks were champions. Miller was basking in the glory, giving interviews, taking all the credit. It was all about discipline. Miller boomed to a local reporter, "My system, my toughness, I pushed Jamal." And he responded, "That's what champions are made of." Just then, the reporter's gaze fell on a framed photograph hanging on the wall of the gym, tucked away in a dusty corner. It was an old, faded black and white picture of a basketball team from decades ago holding a championship trophy. The caption read, "National Champions, 1978, the Northwood Hawks." And in the center of the photo, holding the trophy, a young man, tall and powerfully built, with a confident smile and piercing gray eyes, stood out. His jersey number was 23. The reporter squinted. "Coach, who's that? He looks familiar." Miller glanced at the photo, then waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, that's just some old team. Before my time. Probably some local legend or something." "Local legend?" the reporter mused, pulling out his phone. He typed something, then his eyes widened. "Wait a minute, number 23? James the Ghost Harrison? Is that the same James Harrison who played for Northwood back in the 70s? The one who went on to play pro ball for a few years before disappearing from the public eye?" Miller scoffed. "Harrison, no, that's just Jim, the janitor. He cleans the floors. No relation." The reporter looked from the photo to Miller, then back to his phone, a growing realization dawning on his face. "Coach, James DeGhost Harrison was a national sensation, led Northwood to their only national championship, was drafted by the NBA. He was known for his incredible court vision, his passing, his ghostly ability to appear out of nowhere and make the perfect play." Miller's face went pale. He looked at the photo again, then at the door leading to the locker rooms, where Jim would soon begin his evening rounds. The quiet dignity, the knowing glances, the subtle wisdom Jim had offered Jamal, it all clicked into place. The Ghost. It was a nickname given to him by sports commentators, a testament to his uncanny ability to anticipate plays, to move silently and effectively, making passes no one saw coming, scoring points with an almost ethereal grace. After a few years in the pros, a knee injury had cut his career short, and he had quietly retreated from the spotlight, choosing a life of anonymity. He had returned to his hometown, to the very school where he had become a legend, and had found solace in the quiet, methodical work of a janitor. Miller's jaw dropped. He looked at the reporter, then at the photo, then back at the reporter, a horrified realization dawning on him. He had been picking on a legend. He had been condescending to a man who knew more about basketball, about true greatness, than Miller could ever hope to achieve. Just then, Jim, pushing his cleaning cart, slowly emerged from the locker room. He paused, his gaze falling on the championship photo, a faint, nostalgic smile touching his lips. He looked at Miller, who stood frozen, his face a mixture of shock, embarrassment, and dawning respect. Jim simply nodded, a quiet, knowing nod. Then he turned and began to push his buffer across the gleaming hardwood, the low hum of the machine filling the silence. A silent testament to a legend who had found his own kind of peace far from the roar of the crowd, but still on the court he loved. The reporter, sensing the story of a lifetime, quickly excused himself, already dialing his editor. The news of James the Ghost Harrison, the legendary basketball player turned humble janitor, swept through the town, then the state, then the nation. Jamal, when he heard, was stunned. He sought out Jim that evening, his eyes wide with awe. "Jim, you're the ghost." Jim just chuckled, a deep, warm sound. "Just Jim, son. Always just Jim." But he wasn't just Jim anymore. Not to Jamal, not to the town, not to Coach Miller. Miller, humbled and utterly mortified, found himself approaching Jim with a new, profound respect. He stopped leaving messes. He started greeting Jim with a genuine "Good evening, Jim," and even offered to help him move equipment. He even started incorporating some of Jim's unconventional drills into his practices. Much to the surprise and benefit of his team, the story of James the Ghost Harrison became a powerful reminder for Northwood High and beyond. It was a lesson in humility, in looking beyond appearances, in recognizing that true greatness often walks among us, unassuming and It taught them that wisdom and strength can be found in the quietest corners, and that sometimes the greatest legends are the ones who simply choose to clean up after everyone else. Their legacy etched not in trophies, but in the lives they quietly touch. And every evening, as the gym lights dimmed and the hum of the buffer filled the air, the legend of the ghost continued, a silent, powerful presence on the court he had once dominated, now meticulously preparing it for the next generation of dreams. He was a champion, a mentor, a quiet force, and the man who had taught a blustering coach and an entire community the true meaning of respect.